This is super sick. In general, I love 3D model could be confused with concept art or a painting.
Because I know this is definitely something people are gonna be surprised at how simple it is. It's surprisingly simple.
It looks like it's cheating.
How long have you been in ZBrush for? Like 15 years?
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, more than 15 years probably, and there's always new. You just showed me something right now. I know, that's what's intimidating to young people. How did you make your texture sets?
So it's interesting because my workflow has actually changed, you know, since this project.
Was there anything that maybe was surprisingly challenging about it?
I knew very early on it wasn't gonna work. If I just get this, I'm happy.
Is that the rim light?
Yep, that's just another.
You inflate the model so it's thick. Now that's your line thickness, and then you're having it render inside out.
I just love it so damn much that I just stick to it.
Hello and welcome to Pixel Peeps, where we take a deep dive in some of today's best digital art and 3D models, along with the artists that made them. Today, we're talking with Fred Arsenault. Fred is currently a senior character artist at Epic Games, and in his personal work, he does these awesome stylized 3D characters that kind of look like vinyl toys. It's a style that I love. I've followed his work for a while, and we get a chance to talk about it today. If you want to take a look at the artwork that we're discussing, along with his other links, check out the links in the description below. He actually recently just put out a course on this kind of process with another one of his projects. So if you're really into this, you can take a look at all that. Without further ado, let's jump in and have a chat with Fred Arsenault. All right, let's jump in and talk about this Tiger 3D. So yeah, first off, this is super sick. In general, I love, when a 3D model could be confused with concept art or a painting. In general, I think that's a really cool thing, and there's like an awesome whoa when it turns or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I definitely felt that with this. We got the ink outlines. I definitely want to talk about that. The shapes are super sick. I mean, it looks like it's crazy. Like, it looks like it's cheating. So yeah, the video is great to see where you get that really cool illusion. So I can't wait to learn about some of the things you're doing here. It's definitely different than what I normally do, but I love this style. Yeah. Before we could get into that, maybe you could just some basics that I know people like to know. So the first thing is maybe just what made you choose this. If you could talk a little bit about, like, in general, this project from the start, what you were thinking about when you were going to start, and what ultimately led you to commit to, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, for sure. So my thought, I go through so many concepts, and I'm looking for something that just kind of catches my eye. Something vibrant. I've been really into that lately. It's just something with a lot of colors, something with a lot of vibrancy, and just a lot of personality. So I was looking around for quite a while for me to get something that I liked, and I came across this concept artist that had some really cool, kind of more exactly what I was looking for, stylized, aggressively vibrant colors and stuff like that. So I had seen a lot of students too from where I teach at Think Tank that they were doing a lot of these kind of one-to-one. They were taking an image and trying to replicate it in 3D, and I thought that idea was really cool. So I thought, maybe it'd be cool to try to test that out as well. And there's something interesting about trying to convert something from 2D to 3D, almost like one-to-one, because there's discrepancy sometimes between, the depth and the proportions and everything. So trying to get it to work in 3D is pretty tough, but it's pretty rewarding when it works out. Of course, there's going to be a few little problems here and there and stuff like, you have to adjust for proportions. But with all the training that we do kind of in the industry of matching concepts and making things up, for the things that we don't see, then this was just a really fun exercise for me to kind of explore that. So that concept really attracted me, and I thought, with all the colors and the modeling was very, like, I could picture the modeling and how I was going to approach everything. It's interesting because for a while when I actually started this thing, I don't know if I really wanted to go one-to-one. I was actually trying to just explore a different style, like maybe go a little bit PBR with it. Okay. And I quickly realized that was not going to be the kind of workable solution. So I was like, how can I do this in a more accurate way? So yeah, I explored a few workflows and kind of all worked out.
Yeah, awesome. How do you find the concepts? Is it just on ArtStation, or do you use Pinterest or anything like that to find things?
A little bit all over the place, honestly. Pinterest is the biggest one because I can go kind of down this rabbit hole where I'm just looking for an idea, and then I just see hundreds of other ideas that are similar to that one. Unfortunately, now it's kind of a little bit more flooded with AI art, which is a little hard to kind of filter through. But to be honest, it's just a lot of that going down that rabbit hole and finding something that you like. sometimes what I'll do is I'll go on ArtStation because those are the ones that usually are the closest to what I'm looking for, and then I'll maybe copy the link or the image, put it into Pinterest, and it'll show me some kind of similar ideas and stuff like that. And then I just go from there and I look around until I find something I like. I kind of wish the ArtStation filtering was a little bit better. You know, maybe you want to be a bit specific about what you're looking for, but unless people tag certain things, it's kind of hard to find.
Yeah, it just goes off the tag.
Yeah, exactly.
That is cool about Pinterest. I love the rabbit hole, and I also love that sometimes at least it kind of has the source, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, you can just work in images, but then if you can track it back down to the original,
that too.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, because then they got breakdowns and they have all that extra useful information that you could use to make it work. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Okay, cool. How long did it take you to do this whole project?
To be honest, this was a pretty quick one. I think if I remember correctly, it took me about a week, not even.
Oh, wow.
The modeling process is the more tedious process because once the roadmap is laid down, once all that is modeled the way kind of you would expect, I guess, from matching the concept, it's pretty straightforward. After that, it's just, you know, with this one specifically, when I was looking for the colors, I didn't want anything that was very blended. I was looking for something that had a lot of kind of contrast between colors and shadows and lighting and stuff. So what I was trying to look for was a way to minimize my texturing time. And by doing that, I was able to kind of be more graphic with my colors and my choices. So I was really trying to just find something with, definitely just more of like a graphic style. So I'm looking more for those nowadays too, if I'm going to do something similar, because I find blending introduces a lot of more hand painted. There's more necessity, I guess, to do hand painted stuff in the sense that there's a lot of blending of colors and stuff like that, which becomes something that I'm not really super very good at, I suppose. It's not something that I'm very proficient with. So I find it a little easier to kind of do just that kind of very stark difference between colors and shadows and lights and stuff like that. So it's a little bit easier to apply from a texturing standpoint, especially the fact that I'm not very proficient in 3D Coat or anything like that, the main kind of hand-painted texturing software. So yeah, I find myself just gravitating back to Substance Painter, which I think everybody knows is not really the best hand-painted kind of software to use for stuff like this. I've seen it done, but it's not the best.
Yeah, 3D Coat is the go-to for the most hardcore people.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't apply to this, but that new stylized filter, have you played with that?
Oh yeah, that looks extremely, that just makes me excited because, you know, if you're doing kind of a PBR vibe or whatever, I've seen people do this too, where they do a PBR kind of texture and then they'll go into Photoshop and apply some sort of filter to it that kind of stylizes it, creates some nice brush strokes and stuff like that, and just makes the whole thing look very unique. It makes it really unique. Yeah, that's pretty fast. So it sounds like you're like prioritized texture. Is that most of the time on this one? Yeah, I mean, the texturing again was just due to accuracy. I knew it was going to take a little bit of time, but the modeling is where that's kind of what I do, like I'm more proficient with. Once I got started, man, it was pretty smooth. The whole process was pretty straightforward. You know, a lot of people ask me like, what's going on? This effect is interesting. It's weird. It's, you know, it's very accurate. And I'm like, it's surprisingly simple, to be honest. It's kind of something I didn't really want to gatekeep because I know this is definitely something people are going to be surprised at how simple it is, and I'm sure people are going to have fun doing stuff like this.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. Okay, well, is this the software you use? ZBrush, Maya, Substance Painter, and Marmoset?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just pretty straightforward, yeah.
Before we jump, maybe we can take a look at your file soon. If you could, you start in ZBrush?
Yeah, start in ZBrush. I can share my screen.
Yeah, let's take a look. And while you're pulling it up too, like when you made this, does anything jump out to you as like being the most challenging part? Was there anything that maybe was surprisingly challenging about it, or maybe just in general, like the hardest thing about this one for you?
For me, I mean, I guess my weakest link in my workflow is probably my ability to texture to the quality that I would expect or what I see online. I see a lot of really crazy stuff online. And for me, the thing that I really want to do is just kind of live up to, you know, a lot of people's, like just be up to their level. And I just found that texturing was definitely going to be my biggest challenge. That's why I explored a lot of different styles, but I kind of just reverted back to just being as truthful and accurate to the concept as possible. So, but fundamentally, this does still come down to a really strong model. I think that's like probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
Is if you don't have a clean roadmap, you're really not going to get too much. The tricky thing is that when you're doing stuff like this, when you're kind of looking at a concept like this, and you're trying to extract, because it's very flat, right? When the colors are flat, there's not a ton of dimension. Most of the dimension comes from the lighting information that they've drawn in, but you kind of have to dissect what you can from it. To be honest, I probably went a little bit further than I needed to for it in terms of the modeling, because there's no bakes or anything like that. So I'm losing some dimensions. Like there are some forms in here that I basically put in to kind of guide myself in terms of where I wanted to put the lighting. So maybe on the forearm here, there's a little bit of a muscle definition here. And in the concept, for example, I just pulled that up, you can see there's, you know, just this line here. So that was informing me on how to do the anatomy, but it wasn't really informing me on much else, I'd say, other than that. It's a pretty fun process. I just love modeling, to be honest. It's super fun, and ZBrush has made the whole process pretty straightforward. So
yeah, can you tell me about it? Like, how are you doing it? Are you starting from a sphere, base mesh?
Yeah.
Can I see the wireframe? Like, is it Z-remeshed?
Definitely not. This is messy as all hell, probably.
So is it all Dynamesh or subdivision?
Well, usually what I'll do, regardless of how I work, I like to basically get it Z-remeshed to the point where it's just a manageable mesh for me to work with.
Yeah.
There's really no other purpose for me other than that. I want to make sure that, you know, if I want to make a big change, I can go down subdivisions and kind of just crush it or whatever, make some just large changes. This is obviously coming from the idea that I'm going to get feedback or someone's going to give me some notes or something, so I can kind of crush it if I have to. But yeah, generally I keep it as clean as I can. A lot of my modeling process is, if you've talked to anyone who knows me, is low. Keep it super low, keep it super clean and simple. I'm not the type of person to kind of want to overcomplicate my models too much, in the sense of working straight from a Dynameshed blob or a sphere or anything. Simple Z modeler, primitives. I work with primitives a ton, like, you know, like the super simple stuff. So a lot of this stuff was created from that. You know, maybe some of the more complex stuff, you know, organic stuff like the face or the arm or whatever, I'll start from a sphere. But generally it is just kind of like inserting a tube for the bicep, arm area, shoulder. It's just like segments of pieces of like primitives kind of just jammed together.
Okay.
Dynamesh.
And then melted.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, just melt it all together and kind of just make it work. But yeah, pretty straightforward. And, you know, with things like this, you know, you don't bother doing the back. So this is an absolute mess back here. But full transparency, you know, that's
totally fine. Oh, well, it's interesting to see the head separate. That's cool. I don't think I would have thought of that. That's obviously that's smart.
It's more control.
So I was thinking, when you talked about using primitives and stuff, are you, for personal projects, are you worried about scale or anything? Because you know, when you start in ZBrush, it's so tiny, and then when you bring it over, I mean, but personal projects maybe not that big of a deal. Yeah,
it's a fair point. The only thing that I really care about, especially the fact that I render most of my stuff in Marmoset, is if I want to do some sort of accurate subsurface or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I need to check that stuff. But I generally, like, the way I work is I'll bring a reference cube in from Maya, because Maya for me,
cool.
Yeah, so it's a more reliable kind of way to start. But, you know, we all know that ZBrush isn't the best for scale, but
it's just good for people to know, I mean, that you take that step. I mean, it might be surprising. So you have like a 1 meter or 2 meter cube that I guess is just on your hard drive, and you'll bring that into ZBrush when you start a project. So that's like your top subtool. Then when you append primitives, it's going to be that scale.
Exactly. I trust Maya scale, and so what I'll do is I'll make a reference cube in Maya, I'll bring it into ZBrush, and I'll export back out from ZBrush back into Maya just to double check.
Yeah. So you're a pro.
Yeah, it's paranoia.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, you could tell the people that have been traumatized by ZBrush ruining scale.
I mean, man, even at this stage, there's things that, you know, I'll save it, or I'll do some sort of weird appending, or depending on how, maybe if you're in the Z plugin palette here and you're kind of going into the subtool master and copying folders and whatever, and there's this weird quirk in ZBrush where sometimes where you are working in a scene that wasn't necessarily the original, and you're appending stuff there, and it kind of creates its own new scale, and then you work in there for a bit and you go back, and it kind of it does this weird thing where the scale kind of changes. So yeah, for sanity's sake, I make sure that I'm set from the beginning. I've had enough pain in the past.
Yeah, so that's how we all learned.
Yeah, man.
The arms, are they floating too? By now,
I'd say so. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. Yep.
That's another thing too. Is like, why not, if it's not visible, just cheat it, right? Like, honestly, even the sleeve back here is separated. So
sick, dude. Yeah.
And
you get clean lines that way too. I'm sure sometimes you're
100%.
strategically doing that for the border edge.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you can get any sort of interaction to be cheated in a way. Well, I mean, like, I'm organically finding locations to separate pieces. You know, for example, like on the seams of the shirt, if it's going to be, this is maybe the only one I actually kind of modeled in, but generally, I'll just try to separate where I think it would naturally be separated. I am surprised that I haven't separated the leg out, you know, right where this
where the strap
wrap is.
The strap does the hard edge for you though. It's separate mesh.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like, if you wanted extra control on certain meshes, then like I recommend that absolutely you go ahead and separate as much as you can. But yeah, I wouldn't say that this was like a standard game workflow that I normally do. To be honest, it's a lot of hacky stuff, but regardless, no matter what I'm doing, I still try to make sure my models are kind of as clean as I can get them. So
yeah, it looks super clean. Yeah. The grayscale poly paint that we are seeing right now. Yeah. So I do it for when I work too, to inform, but how much are we seeing? Like, is this what you made before you textured it? B, are you using it somehow in your texture? And, or is there anything here that is just to make the high poly images look good for ArtStation after the fact?
Kind of a little bit of everything. I'd say, to be honest, for me, it's more of just visual feedback. If I'm placing these landmarks that I'm seeing in the concept, like let's say, for example, these little arrows or whatever, if I place them, for me, it's a nice reference point to be able to understand the proportions that I've laid in based on what I'm seeing in the concept. So I'm really using it as a guide. I do a lot of stuff like, again, we're talking about accuracy here. I'm measuring little areas, like what's the distance maybe of this little jukebox here thing to the other one, little things like that, just measuring distances. And I kind of use polypaint as a reference point in the same way that if I'm laying this down in relation to what I see in the concept, is it accurate to what I did? So it's really just a kind of a placeholder thing. I really don't use this in any other software other than ZBrush. I usually prefer to work in grayscale mode, but again, at the end, I've been kind of used to adding a little bit of polypaint. I don't really transfer it out, or I don't really, again...
Okay, you don't transfer it at all?
No, it was just, for information's sake, really, more than anything. It was just a way for me to kind of get an idea. And I also I think too, I recommend this to anyone really when they're doing any sort of, stylized model or any really model or anything. Like when you're in ZBrush, leaving it in grayscale is fine, but I think that I would do at least a value grayscale, like going into lights and darks, getting an understanding of like how materials might be separated. Even if you're not playing with materials in ZBrush, at least you're understanding that this is going to be separate from this, or, something, maybe the bag is going to be a certain material or whatever. But yeah, it's grayscale city over here. I'm just trying to go ahead and absolutely just kind of identify some landmarks and stuff like that. So I'm big on my background too. I want to make sure my background's a certain color just to make sure that it's not, it's not interfering with the silhouette or anything like that. I want to make sure it's almost like a cutout, right? Again, as we can see with the concept, it's pretty stark, from the character to background. So I just wanted to make sure that was a prominent thing.
Are you changing the background per project?
No, man, this is I locked in.
This is your standard, right?
Yeah, this is the color I've locked in. I find it's perfect for, I've gone a little bit brighter sometimes, but this is kind of the one I've locked in. But I really like this color, and you
get the silhouette. You get to emphasize the silhouette.
Exactly, yeah. With ZBrush sometimes, I have a few plugins that actually negate a little bit of the shadows in the scene itself. But I have this. Oh, really? Yeah, this Ryan's tool is actually the one I use quite a bit. But you can actually turn on some additional, on and off some additional shadows, I guess. I find that if people are using the default ZBrush background, it kind of impairs some of the judgment calls that they might be making, because there's a gradient, right? Like, I don't know, maybe this is just a preference, but when there's too much darkness and the shadows are kind of contributing to the model, like you're seeing the shadows on the model, you might confuse that with the background, and it kind of might change the silhouette. So again, for accuracy's sake, I make sure that the background is nicely separated from the model too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I do take away the gradient too.
Yeah. It's not pleasing to the eye, I think, personally.
No. Yeah. I mean, everyone does customize ZBrush, but
yeah, exactly.
Hearing you say all this too, I mean, wouldn't it be cool? I mean, God, I've been waiting forever, but as soon as ZBrush got bought by Maxon, I was like, when are we gonna be able to just have a render? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some actual lights and shadows.
I've done that in the past too, trying to composite things together. It's worked out pretty okay. I just I'm going back to the old ZBrush Summit presentations that Grassetti was giving.
I know, me too. I've done the Grassetti things. But I mean, like, you'd think at some point that BPR in the upper right corner would just be replaced with, what do they call their...
Redshift now?
Yeah, Redshift. Yeah. And then now you have a Redshift viewport. You can move around. You let it do its thing. And it's a real, like, unbiased render. One day, dude. Yeah. I really hope one day there's just one master software that has everything. Yeah. I mean, I love seeing, I guess 3D Coat does it. I'm sure some other things do it that I'm not. It kind of Blender too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
But being able to sculpt with actual light and shadows is this, like, ZBrush people. I feel like we're back in the Stone Age, but I assume one day in modeling it's always going to be like that. Like, you're just working almost like an engine,
Yeah, 100%.
And people will be like, they're going to think this is archaic. The fact that we're like it's like black and white TVs before color.
Yeah,
we all have to make it work.
Exactly. I don't know how you feel about, like, how you've learned things over time and stuff like that, but I really am an old dog that can't learn new tricks sometimes. I get to the point where I just become comfortable with my workflows and I stick to it. So new software comes up, but I tend to just kind of stick to what I know.
I think I kind of split the difference, because I try to learn new things that I think are worth it, because it is kind of a pain to do.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I don't know if I'm coping or if it's true, but like with the whole Blender ZBrush thing, like, to me, it's clear that ZBrush is still the best at what it does, but it has a lot of these blind spots. So it's like you can't replace it or anything like that. It is the best digital sculpting because of how fast it is with high polygons. And I think that's its strength and its weakness. Like the reason why it's less crazy now, but the fact that it's been like this for like 20 years. Like it was mind blowing back then that you're like, this is 10 million polygons, and I'm just like doing a brushstroke. So nowadays I think it's less clear to people, but still you can feel it. If you try to sculpt in another program that's literally just rendering a million polygons, you can feel that lag. Just like gamers are like, you can tell the difference between 100 FPS and 30 FPS.
Yeah.
That's how I feel with ZBrush. So yeah, as much as I think it'd be cool to see it rendered, to me it's still worth it to like just, it doesn't get in the way of that sculpting process, you know, the feel that you can just make stuff happen.
I'm glad that they're picking up on that too, that the fact that they're willing to kind of integrate some sort of render in it and make it what we are, just exactly what you're talking about right now too, which is a one and done kind of thing, you know. Yeah, that's the thing too. I've removed my Maya modeling workflow too. I've seen a few people mention that too, is that the Z modeler has kind of taken over my modeling process too, in the same way that I want to make sure that I minimize my back and forth. I've made it easy for myself to go back and forth between softwares with bridges and stuff like that. But
so you do use Bridge?
I use my own kind of, it's not really my own, I didn't make it or anything, but I found actually one of my students shared an image from a kind of like a copy paste tool that they found online that so you set up a script in Maya, and then it sends an object to a certain file directory, and then the macro that you set up in ZBrush will basically kind of sample that directory, and it will bring in that object. So it's literally just you hit export, and then in ZBrush here you can see my little UI. It says import temp here. It's pretty good because, again, if you go off of like, and it's quick, man. It's really quick. If you're talking about saving a little bit of time here and pain points, this is a pain point. Is having to go into Explorer, find a location, save it, all that stuff, and then get it out again.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like Z. Was it what's that one bridge for ZBrush? GoZ.
Yeah, GoZ.
Yeah, I think GoZ is good, but as far as I know, GoZ saves a file somewhere every time you click GoZ, and it doesn't get rid of it. So I found that this is really nice because
didn't know that.
It just overwrites it. So like you could do this 100 times and it's just a single piece or whatever. And yeah, it minimizes the clutter and stuff. I do try to stay in ZBrush as much as I can, whether it is for modeling or rendering and stuff like that. But sometimes it doesn't scratch that itch just in terms of the rendering. So yeah, I think you've done the same too with your projects too, where like you're now, I mean, not even now, but like recently you've done a lot of really cool Unreal stuff. So that's another one I kind of really want to, dive deeply into. But yeah,
I think the future is good there. No, definitely worth it on that one.
It's a very intimidating thing to kind of get into, but
it is. I have an advantage that's the engine I've been using at work. So I felt like, I'm in a unique position where I'm like, okay, great. If I was doing it by myself, it would take longer. But I try and make it simpler for modelers because it's the thing about everything, but with Unreal Engine, you can make everything.
Anything, yeah.
And so it's all the things you don't need to know that get in the way.
How would you find your experience as a character artist in your career working in Unreal on a day-to-day basis? Have you found it to be as in-depth as you would expect? Like other people would assume you work as a character artist in Unreal Engine and you're thinking to yourself, everyone around you probably thinks, oh, well, this guy's a wizard in Unreal because they work in it. To be honest, most of my past career has been a matter of importing meshes and then checking textures and stuff like that. But I've never really taken a deep dive into materials and whatnot. I feel like this might be this industry misconception that because you work in an engine, you're some sort of master in it or something. But surprisingly, there are senior level people that have literally never done anything other than just checking materials and textures and stuff like that. Have you found that to be true?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's probably related to people have an apprehension of learning a new software or learning anything new, right? Because on the other side of the fence that they can't see, they can imagine, oh shit, this is gonna be so crazy. And then when you get there, you're like, oh, it gets simpler. I think it's the same thing about skills. People think, oh, they use Unreal, they must be a wizard because Unreal can do amazing shit. But yeah, for the most part, people just know how to do. And I work with people that are brilliant and experts at their thing. And it could be like a person in Maya and they're like, because I'm the modeler, it'd be like a tech animator person be like, hey, can you whatever it is, like fix the UV set, or it's something that seems simple to me, but it doesn't fall into the wheelhouse. So people really highly specialize.
That's exactly
And yeah,
it.
most character artists do not go as deep as I have with Unreal, and I don't go that deep, but I try to make personal projects and animate and make materials and stuff, and that does go beyond the normal thing that people need to know how to do their jobs. I do it because I want to learn, I'm interested, I want to make stuff, and then I have found though that it has, I think, helped in the career.
Agreed.
I can have better conversations. I can mock things up. I know if someone's kind of bullshitting, or I can help brainstorm a solution. As you know, like when you learn stuff, I think you just get different ideas pop in your head because you're going to intuitively know what's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just understanding, I think, how things work at a little bit more than basic level is a good thing. So I think as long as it's enjoyable, learning as much as you can, it's going to help. Yeah.
Again, I haven't found it to be necessarily a necessity in terms of my career, but it's definitely that artistic hunger to kind of just grow and learn to do something new and interesting. And especially with Unreal, how insanely in-depth it is, and the results that you can get. Like I see some crazy projects being rendered in Unreal, and I'm like, why does that look significantly better just because it's presented in Unreal? It's because there's so much in-depth stuff behind the scenes going on that, you know, it makes it so much like just it's better presented and better received, I'd say. But yeah, it's super cool. I just
and transferable skills, you know, that's the thing. That's why I really push it on everyone. Like Marmoset, as we're going to get into, I'm sure, like Marmoset is so easy to use and the results are great. They're the top.
Yeah.
So it's obviously compelling. Unreal Engine is free, which is nice, but also it's going to be a lot clunkier to get a result that might not be as good, let's say, if you just compare apples to apples. But it's so much better, I think, in terms of being transferable to stuff. Marmoset is like for displaying things.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you know how to do your job, that's great. But if someone can, I think at least trying a project in Unreal, yeah, it'll help you, I think, be able to do more things.
That's the thing.
Hey, there it is.
Yeah, that's the thing with Marmoset for me is I find it to be user friendly and it doesn't necessarily limit my creativity, I suppose. Like, interestingly enough, that Unreal does promote creativity, but it also, if you're not as knowledgeable with it, like anything really, it will tend to kind of slow down the process. And I find myself just banging my head on my screen trying to figure out what I actually is trying to go on in my head. And I find that is a bit of a roadblock sometimes. And I really do appreciate Marmoset for the fact that it has the ability to just kind of plug and play.
Yep.
Your vision is straightforward. It's ready to go. It's there, and it's not impeded by anything else. And
it is the best. It is the best at that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is awesome.
You know, like I have the want in Marmoset, for example, to do something simple like this, and it allows me to just do that. I'm able to just kind of get some materials going and keep it simple. For this one specifically, too, you know, what I was doing was like, how can I present this, kind of represent the concept as accurately as possible? And I realized that lighting information was probably going to end up hindering this more than anything. So because the lighting information is baked into the concept and into my texturing, I wouldn't want to kind of add an extra layer of it if I can avoid it. I mean, I have my sky, and I think this very basic like light just kind of brightens things up.
Yeah, it has like a soft shadow.
Yeah, just something really, really, really generic, but mainly it's just like a single light. So what I'll do to kind of get this effect working is after I export my maps, which again is really comes down to just a diffuse map. There's no other need for any sort of other input maps because it's not really relying on that.
Yeah. I would love to see Substance too if you can.
Yeah, I definitely have it here. With Painter is kind of the same process where
okay.
Yeah,
there's some tune lines on here that I wasn't expecting to see. That's cool.
Yeah, that's the thing is like in here again, I'm really trying to just do everything. So I think the only additional thing I did in Marmoset here, for example, was add this kind of black outline kind of tune shader thing. It's kind of like my thing that I do nowadays, and I will admit I think I overuse it a little bit, but I just love it so damn much that I just stick to it. But generally, in this case, you know, for example, I really wanted to kind of embed as much as I could into it. So having all the little lines and all the little colors and stuff like that in there was
that's so fun, dude. Damn.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was for me. It was super, super fun because at some point you kind of just shut your brain off and you just put some headphones on, you put some music on, and you just kind of look at the concept, you do this, you do, you know, it's just back and forth. It's really, really kind of zen. And it's pretty fun. I think I went as far maybe as adding like a little bit of depth to some stuff, but to be honest, it's been a while. But I would actually not be surprised if things like this, where I added, you know, this kind of quote unquote depth, I would have just painted that line in, you know, actually just painted this information as opposed to actually creating depth.
Oh, I thought that was painted, but that's a height.
I think it is height, yeah, just
Okay,
for that
cool.
extra little layer of interest.
Yeah.
But I'm not even sure if I used it or not. But yeah, you can see how like when you rotate around, some things break, right? So this kind of tune effect is limiting. I've done another project too. There's another. I have a character that's a girl on a bike with some rats and stuff, and it's kind of the same idea that I found myself limited by the rotation of the model. That if I
Yeah.
really wanted to go like a full 360, then I would definitely have to hone in my either a design skills or ability to kind of continue the momentum of whatever I saw in the concept, in the sense that, you know, I could easily go back here and start doing some stuff, but as you can see, this is where it's,
Oh
oh,
wow.
it's broken. It's totally broken back here. But I knew that. I knew that going in, that I
Yeah.
didn't want to go and kind of do the full 360, right? So just a little bit of a pan like this is all I was really
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah, just get the parallax.
Yeah.
Oh, so is that white that we're seeing, is that the rim light?
Yep, that's just another paint layer, kind of a blue paint
Oh,
layer.
cool. Yeah,
Yep.
dude.
Just going in
Okay.
there and just adding some colors.
I was like, oh, I thought you were like, "Ah, I just didn't paint that," but now I see. Yeah, that's sick, dude.
Almost everything is painted. That's the thing, is like I wanted to make sure that everything was in the textures, in the colors. I didn't want to have to be too finicky with the lights or rendering style. Dude, I even
Wow.
went down to the route of, speaking of ZBrush too, trying to do the whole tune thing,
Uh-huh.
and it didn't work out for me again. I explored a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of scenarios.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any experiments, failed experiments of the different looks of this project?
That is a good question. I am not too sure. I'd have to dig into that a little bit, but as far as I know, I don't, because I knew very early on it wasn't going to work. But yeah, I think it just didn't pan out. But unfortunately, I didn't.
Yeah, no
I don't
worries.
I don't usually save those. But
Any work in progress renders from Marmoset before you had the final setup?
no, man. To be honest, that's again, it kind of goes into the whole plug and play thing. Is that once I
Sick.
painted this, and I like, you can kind of tell already when you're in Painter, you're like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
if I just get this, I'm happy. Basically,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
all I did from that point on was just take it out of Substance Painter. Literally, just exported a diffuse map. I don't think
I mean, this looks great right now. It's kind of crazy, yeah, just because of the style, I guess. And is there any viewport stuff? Because I know, like, in Painter, it's pretty common to change the default environment so that it's not that sunny field. Are
Yeah.
you doing that? Are you doing any shadows?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're using Tomoko, okay.
Yeah.
That's the number one, dude. I need to get a shirt made that's just Tomoko.
Exactly. Yeah. Tomoko is like,
Team Tomoko,
I,
dude.
I made that shift I think I realized that what is it, the panorama one, the default one that just had that
Yeah.
yellow lighting. Anytime I do any sort of even PBR or this kind of stuff, I try to go as neutral as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And I even knew doing
That's
this
so funny.
that I wasn't going to do any sort of lighting. So if anything, I would have liked to just focus on this mainly, right? Just the kind of,
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
diffuse. But I was missing out on a little bit of depth, mainly.
Okay, so you baked. You baked.
Yeah, so that's actually, interestingly enough, I did bake and I realized I didn't need it.
Okay.
I mean,
You didn't use any generators for like light, you know, how you could fake like a baked in lighting. Did you do any of that? Or is
none of that.
everything hand
No,
painted?
no. I mean, I've used that quite a bit actually on a recent character I did too, like a Batman one. I was throwing gradients at this thing like absolutely crazy, but in this case, man, no, I never did any of that stuff. I just, to be honest, for me, is like, again, it's accuracy. So if a generator or anything can get me maybe 80% of the way there, that's still not good enough for me. And I feel like maybe I could fill in the last 20%, but I felt like it was a little bit more therapeutic and enjoyable for me to just do it straight from scratch by hand the whole way
Right.
through.
So is every color we're seeing here
Mm-hmm.
a fill layer and then you have a mask?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's as simple as that. So I took the concept, I found what I was assuming was kind of a mid-tone, dark tone. Actually, what I ended up, I think, doing too is adding a layer on top. I think it was a black layer with a multiply. Basically, so I didn't have to override the color that I was using. For example, here on the arm, I made sure that again, if I remember this correctly, I didn't have to, maybe create a darker beige color here. What I just did is I put a layer on top with a multiply that is black, and just painted it in at a certain opacity to give the illusion of like a darker value. It didn't need another color. So I guess in that way, I wouldn't say cheated, but I was a bit more strategic with my choice in terms of color, because I could have gone 1-to-1 with everything, how
Yeah.
these are darker blues, these are, mid-tone blues, and this is a lighter blue. But I didn't feel like I wanted to get that specific, or not that specific, but I didn't want to just make hundreds of layers of just all of that stuff. So I
Yeah,
found,
yeah.
put one layer at the top, multiply black, and then just go in and kind of paint in the shadows.
Are you doing like on the stripes or on the ink lines?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing the thing like maybe you could show one of those layers? Like, is it multiple paint layers on a mask to keep it like non-destructive, or you just can you just do it all? Oh, okay, cool. So not even a paint layer on the masks.
No, not even. It's. I mean, like, so again,
Just painting on there in and out, right?
yeah, exactly. Like I basically just have the full color kind of for the whole thing, right? And then sometimes, again, this is another thing with working with personal stuff is I'm not super
Yeah, and you're going fast and
clean.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
sure.
This is my base layer, so obviously I flooded with the whole, the
Yeah.
default color on top, and then I'll go in here and just add the
Yeah.
beige and stuff like that, and then just continue on. There's the stripes, and then here we have what is this one here? Again, if I should just label all the inside of the ears here. In that case, where I think there was a different value or different hue or something, then that's when I was adding a different layer. Yeah, see here, this is my shading layer. So it was just kind of this, let's see, what is this kind of beigeish color here? Yeah, it's just a little bit of, you see it hits on a multiply here. I think if I put it back to normal, kind of looks like this.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's actually multiplying. It's not just a straight up.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It gives a nice effect. And I think just one generic beige or whatever was enough for me to get this effect. So, if you want to be even more specific, you can pick a color per region. Generally, that was kind of all I did.
It's so cool how it looks so great in here.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. It's cool because it makes me realize that Substance Painter is actually a viable option to do stuff like this. And
literally, this could be your renders. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
That's the fun part.
And it's also the process. Like that rim light is like, if I saw this, I would be like, wow, how is he getting that rim light in Painter? And it wouldn't even occur to me.
I'm cheating.
Yeah, you just paint it on there. Yeah, I mean, it looks better that way even.
Yeah, I agree.
The form isn't, you can really control the shape.
That's the magic word is control, man. I'm a control freak when it comes to my art. It's just making sure everything is exactly where I want it to be. That's, I think, the most frustrating thing is like I'm doing a piece and I'm like, I want this right here. And I over obsess. I'll spend hours on just getting this one thing in this one spot and it just doesn't work. And I'm so annoyed.
But that's what's so satisfying. It's like scratching an itch when you can like get the exact thing you want.
Exactly.
Let me ask some basic question real quick that I missed when we're in ZBrush. I just wanted to get your thoughts. So like, did you bring in the concept, like that hand, for instance, screen left is crazy. And there's other examples of how the shapes are great and they very similar to the concept. Do you bring in the concept to line it up? If so, if not, what are your thoughts? You recommend that to people?
100%. So I know there are different ways of doing this, but what I like to do is spotlight for a few reasons. You can do it a couple ways. So if I go into texture and I just add the image in the slot here and I just import that in, I can actually position the image wherever I want, and I actually can save that document, right? I can kind of save where that position is. I have had times where there's been a disconnect. I'll come back a day later and there's like maybe I'm trying to do something again and just like the concept doesn't necessarily line up, but I try to just kind of wing it at that point. But what I'll do is I'll go into the timeline. I actually save it on a timeline. Yeah. So with this timeline, I can, save position here. I can save a position here. And then just using the keys on the keyboard, I can kind of just toggle between these two views.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Did you make so you made those hotkeys right there?
No, this is default ZBrush, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't even use this. Okay, great.
Yeah, this is good for, again, when you're trying to like, maybe you have a head reference here or whatever, and you're just going to line it up to check your proportions. And then you just snap back to, you start working on it again and you're like, okay, I want to check how that works. And I just kind of go back and hit the arrow key and it just kind of snaps back. So proportionally check. This is a big one for me. I really do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, this is great. Well, what did you just do? You said show timeline in the movie?
So you go movie here.
Oh, because you're like, it's like, it thinks you're animating a camera.
Yeah, or something. I don't even know what the original purpose, for this was, but yeah, I learned this from a colleague of mine at my last job, and he showed me this, and I was like, this is life changing. Because what I used to do,
I used to do what you're gonna show. It's save all those cameras.
Yeah, man. Because you're limited to what, like 8?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like, look how many cameras. And then, so 2 questions. One, what's the hotkey to move between them? And then how do you save it?
To click or to make one, essentially, if I wanted to, do a little zoom into the face or whatever, I can click anywhere on the timeline. I can add like 20 or 30 if I want. I'm not going to just for the sake of time here. But if you wanted to add one, you click on the timeline. If you wanted to remove it, you just right click and drag off and then it's gone. But if you wanted to cycle between the ones you have, you just hit left and right on the arrow keys. And then you can kind of just toggle between your views. So, and there's a blend between the two for some reason.
Yeah, so I think you're animating. Yeah,
exactly.
That's cool. Now, how do you save this? Do you and also do you save projects with your ZBrush projects, or you just save ZTLs?
ZTLs all the way for me. I think ZPRs are too cumbersome and there's too much stuff in there that I don't need. So what I'll do is I'll go into the movie here again. Yeah, you can save your timeline out.
There you go.
Yeah,
dude.
I'm very surface level with this stuff. I'll put it in, I'll save it out and I'll just bring it in. It serves my purpose. There's a bunch of other options here, obviously audio and stuff. I have no idea what this.
No, this is great. No, this is a great tip, dude.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad I asked about the concept.
Are you still?
And how do you save Spotlight? Yeah, I still do that. I actually have. I think I even have a hotkey, or I make a hotkey each time
Right.
And I told people to do that, but yeah, this is way better.
Yeah.
And yeah, what about Spotlight? How do you save that?
That one is a little bit trickier because the document is going to be kind of important for me. So I want to make sure first thing that I know what my width and height is of my document. So I make sure that that's like saved. I'll put it in a stored note somewhere. But generally, I mean, like if you're loading the same document up on the same computer, you're going to have the same document size every time. But the concept, I found that it's a lot easier once the timeline is saved, that once my model is snapped to that position I had saved in the timeline, to just line up the concept. If you're thinking about, you know, focal length or whatever that you have in ZBrush and how maybe it might be different from project to project, lining up the model to the concept is harder to do than to line up the concept to the model. So what I'll do is I just set up with a spotlight. I'm okay with losing where the spotlight position was because I've saved my camera or my position of my, you know, actual piece here, of my 3D piece. So if I'm correct about this, you might actually be able to go into document and do a save as document. I don't know if it actually stores spotlights in the document save. You know how you do like a save as startup doc here?
Yeah, I don't think so.
So yeah, I mean, that's again my lack of experimenting with it. But again, for me, it's just like I can just bring the concept in through Spotlight and just line it up again. So that's what I'm talking about, where like there might be a very subtle little tiny discrepancy because you're doing this maybe once or twice or 3 times a week or whatever, so it becomes this this little process. But yeah, it's pretty streamlined now, and it makes it very easy to kind of do this.
Okay, last question about that.
Yeah.
Do you know, can I save a camera position and the lens size, the focal length, and then keyframe a different one?
That is a good question. You know what? Actually, I don't know. I don't want to say no and I don't want to say yes, but theoretically, I don't think it stores necessarily all of the camera information. I think it's just stores
Probably
a
just
position.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's a good question.
I think the other cameras, I think those other buttons down there do, I think. Because I think it does save cameras. But
Oh,
I could
okay.
be wrong.
Interesting.
I think so.
Yeah, I guess you might have that.
I guess since I don't know, it can't be that important.
Exactly. I have the same thing here. I haven't really dug into it. How long have you been in ZBrush for? Like 15 years?
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, more than 15 years probably. And there's always new. You just showed me something right now. I know. That's what's intimidating to young people or people getting into it late.
Yeah.
But I try to tell them it doesn't matter. But
yeah, what are you doing, right?
I try to explain the UI of ZBrush is like that drawer that most people have in their house that just has all the shit that goes in there with no organization whatsoever.
Hey, look, this.
And every now and again, you're like, oh, where are the scissors?
Yeah.
And you like open it, and you're, oh, there it is. Most of the time, you don't. You know, you just use it for the sculpting.
Exactly.
But it's nice to know all these little things.
That's the thing too, like the old dog learning new tricks. I'm down for it with ZBrush because I'm already in it. But if someone's asking me, hey, do you want to learn Topo Gun or Rism UV or something, I'm like, that's intimidating.
Yeah, Rism. I passed on Rism. Yep.
You did?
I'm like, yeah, that one. I don't know. I'm too old. I'm like, I can UV. I mean, whatever. It takes me a long time. Whatever. You know.
And I mean, like Maya's standard industry, like it's industry standard for most studios, as far as I know. So
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Just stick with it. I mean, how many people have asked you, hey, why not do this in Blender? I'm like, more power to you, man. I swear I have no clue how to do it, but if you can do it, then go for it. I commend you too. But
okay, so about ZBrush, and to wrap up the model right there, I assume you did the Z remeshing and stuff. Did you just auto unwrap? How did you make your texture sets? I saw you had like 4 or 5. Like, are you just auto unwrapping here and packing in Maya, or do you pack here or something?
So it's interesting because my workflow has actually changed since this. Since this project. I think this was like a few years ago, but I think that like what I would do is, you could do it in ZBrush. Again, the control is there, not super intuitive in terms of my opinion, I would say. But if I was going to talk about it with present Fred, my requirement would be to do it in Maya. I think my Maya workflow would be a lot better. I just feel like at that point I can layer not layer or stack, but I can organize the UVs the way I want. I can kind of just do everything that way. So I think that's another benefit too, again, of why I prefer to have subdivisions, is going down to a low subdiv, and then I would just kind of, do my UVs there. And I think that might be why I bake too, because there is also, some people will do vertex color exports, like maybe they'll do their poly paint in ZBrush and then they'll export out and then do all that stuff in Substance Painter. But it's kind of a half-ass kind of game ready workflow where you try to give UVs and bakes and stuff like that. I realize, it's maybe not always necessary, but I don't do a ton of UVs. If I wanted to do UVs in ZBrush, I would do it for maybe adding some sort of threading to this or whatever. In that case, I would stick into ZBrush because it's not super, I don't need to be like super specific about my orientation or whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's like a certain pattern direction, of course I, have to move my UVs around and stuff like that. But
Maybe, yeah, we could finish with Marmoset, and also maybe you could share that outline tip. I have a vague idea of how it's done, but I haven't done it. Yeah, maybe you could share that. And I guess you do that in Maya, or can you do that all in Marmoset?
Okay, so if we're thinking about a production-friendly workflow, this I would say is probably not production-friendly.
No.
But basically what it is just taking your initial model. So I have the outline. So basically what I've done is I've taken every single individual texture set and I've exported it out. So I've duplicated the mesh, I've inverted the normals, and then I've inflated outwards. Yeah.
Like if you selected one of your outlines, you could show what the mesh is.
Yep. So if I do just turn callback phases off.
There you go. That looks kind of cool, dude. It looks like a gorilla's character.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, basically like if the way that any software will generally render this is that it will try to make it kind of a solid double-sided mesh, essentially. Yeah. When you have callback faces turned on, it will basically just kind of worry about, I guess, the exterior portion, or what the difference is between, I guess in this case, it's the difference between the model itself, size difference of the outline, and it'll just kind of like fill that whole thing with black. So I think if I just turn this entire tiger off, this is what I'm left with.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a great way if people can visualize.
Yeah.
You inflate the model so it's thick. Now that's your line thickness.
Yeah.
And then you're having it render inside out. So it's the opposite of how it's normally rendered. And so once you put your real model in there, then as you move the camera around, you're always only seeing the outside.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't be surprised if tune shading, like in a rendering, like in Unreal, math wise, it's probably very similar to this, but you don't want to have to rig and animate like every mesh twice.
Exactly.
So it's done in like the rendering passes. Yeah. For people that want to show off their model.
Yeah,
it's a great way to make it happen.
It's pretty cool, man. And I would say there are some downsides to it, some crutches, I guess, some bad stuff. For example, where the mesh clips with other stuff, you'll see that it's clipping through, right? Like it's cutting that outline out. But for the most part, it does the work. It does the effect that I'm looking for. And
it's even cool. Like you could, if you wanted to, like which I like, we talk about control. So yeah, you and I are simpatico about that. I would be tempted to like go in and like inflate some parts bigger, and like because then you can make the line thickness bigger.
Yeah, actually I did see somebody do a recent video of that, how there's a much more graphic effect of inflating certain areas and changing the line width or the line weight, essentially. But yeah, you could go also as far as saying that, in the areas in which this outline is clipping, go into the model. I could easily done this, but this would have been more hours of work for me, right? But I could have gone into the model here and just kind of painted in the black where it's intersecting.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
With the outline, right? Just to fill in those holes. But
in a way too, I mean, some of those little mistakey things kind of, in my opinion, make it look, I mean, yeah, it's not perfectly clean, but like there's times where you zoom in, you see in your ArtStation post where things get a little, the line breaks and stuff, and it just kind of makes it feel a little bit more handmade anyways, like when it slips a little bit, because now when you look at like Spider-Verse, like they're intentionally adding stuff like that where things slip, and so I think it's kind of cool.
It feels a little bit more a little less tailored, I guess. Yeah, it's an effect I've kind of accepted the downfalls of, but I think it was pretty neat. Speaking of the Unreal stuff, I actually have tried to do it kind of in a post-process way too, and it is this like extremely long process to get it to work. It's a screen space thing, and then they try to measure the distance of the mesh, and then basically kind of depending on where the camera is to the position, and you could have it so that depending on where the camera is, the line width stays the same. So you zoom out, the thing is blown out to all hell where the lines are super thick because it's trying to maintain that exact width depending on, where you are camera-wise. There's a lot of little quirks and stuff about it that makes it a little bit more complex. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Marvel Rivals might use a similar method.
They did a great one, though. Yeah, they figured it out.
Yeah.
Because they use Unreal. And also, I'm really impressed by their rim light.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what you're showing here, like that was a head scratcher for me. I was trying to figure out how they're doing it because they're bypassing some things. Like they're bypassing the normal map for sure. I think they're doing some stuff to the shape. I think they are. I don't think it's just a hard edge on the model. Maybe it is, and the model is just made in such a way where it looks like that. But when I see it, it looks like what you're doing. It looks like a painted straight line in some areas. So anyways, I think, like as you're talking about it, that's what I was thinking. Is like there are a lot of different ways to do it. It's like a spectrum when you're doing the actual rendering way.
Yeah.
And I think Marvel Rivals, is the best kind for the comic book style. And what I like about the model kind that you're doing now is we know how to do it. It makes sense to do it in the model. You get things like the bag you know, other things are going to have lines on top of lines. It's not going to, you know, you don't have to worry about material assignments and bullshit. And
Exactly.
as you're talking about, like, I don't want it to be dynamic, you know, like if I zoom in, it's a different thickness than when I zoom out, and you're going to be in the material graph doing all kinds of crazy shit. So yeah, I think this is for all modelers. If you want to do a inky outline, this is obviously the way.
Simple, clean. I think it's effective.
Definitely.
The payback for how simple it is definitely there. So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
In terms of other stuff in here, like there's really not much more. It's just the normal map I put in, but you can tell if I deactivate the normal map on some of these, what is it really doing? Like you can see here on the face.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
A little bit of a change in terms of
Oh yeah,
what I've
yeah,
sculpted
cool,
in.
dude. I like that.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like I said here, you know, for the forearm, for example, if I turn that off and on, oh sorry, this is the normal map here. See how there's this very little subtle line that I've painted in, but really not much, you know, working there. And I realized that with my last project too, that the girl on the bike, I did the same thing. I realized I don't even need these normal maps. There's just so much modeling information in terms of form.
That's great.
That there's no internal sculpting information needed. So
yeah, that might lead into like one of the questions I like to ask is just, well, now that you've completed and everything, looking back on it, what's one thing maybe that you feel like you took away, that you absorbed from the experience making the project, like your main takeaway when you think about this project?
Yeah, I think modeling is to not be underestimated. I think that the modeling is going to be something that you want to dial in as much as humanly possible. I think people look at this and they think all rendering, all lighting, all texturing, sure, to an extent, but none of this will work if you have a crappy model to work with. So don't underestimate that. You might be able to cut some corners in terms of, you know, like I said, the forms, like I just showed. But generally, I would say modeling is going to be the one you want to be as accurate with as possible.
Great.
That's my take.
And I think the model is awesome. The shapes are really good. And I think it's a great artwork to kind of illustrate what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a simple, like we saw, simple texture, simple render setup. It's a strong model with great shapes, and the vision was really clear. You stuck to it. And a lot of what makes this project stand out and work is all the things that it's not doing. Like you said, you're even turning off normal maps, and I think that's should be inspirational for people to see. It's not about add everything you can.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a long time to get here where you can whittle it down.
I would love to see people take this one step further too, and make it production friendly, or, you know, like an actual game ready asset. I think that would be extremely exciting to see, and take the time to, you know, take care of this stuff back here too. You know, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Marvel Rivals. I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, wow, it just had me thinking about it all the time. I just think it's
100%,
great looking, and that makes me way more excited than the other things that are really realistic for whatever reason. We've been doing it long enough or whatever. I just think what they did is great. They didn't phone it in. They really, you know, took it serious, and you can tell. I think it's really cool.
It's peak, man. I honestly, I would consider that to be one of my favorite style, like just in terms of the way that they rendered everything. It's stylistically just peak for me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I think, like, even if you just think about comic book art as 3D models, that's a big spectrum. They're not all equal, and this is great. Like, it just felt like, you know, when I was a kid, I would collect comic books, and I would like some more than others. And I just think seeing these characters, I'm like, holy shit, this is actually dope comic book art.
Exactly.
In 3D, and the animations are great. Everything, they really crushed it. Yeah,
comic book art similarly for me has been an extremely big influence, and I love this kind of very graphic rendering.
You can tell. I mean, this is so cool to see. Yeah, it really is like a comic book come to life, and I think you did obviously the concept art justice. It's great.
Awesome, appreciate that.
Yeah, man, cool. So maybe just to wrap up, maybe do you have anything like what you're looking forward to next when you think about personal projects? Are you working on one now, or when you think about the future, what's the kind of stuff that excites you right now?
I've been really into starting to think about doing more content creation in terms of YouTube and stuff like that. I just really want to make sure people, the industry is on fire right now a little bit, and I want to make sure that people get the information that they are needing. I'm trying to humble myself by saying that, you know, I'm not saying that the info I give is the be all end all of info, but I find that there's a lot of wasted time and a lot of holes to fill in terms of maybe specifically stylized art or anything like that. So I'm really trying to make sure that my content is up to date, and people can kind of rip out as much information as possible. Yeah, but that's what I'm working on, is just tutorials and videos and content for people, and potentially mentorships down the road, and basically just trying to get people educated in you know, doing their best to fight the good fight in the industry right now and see what they can do. So,
well, great, man. I mean, I feel similar, and I think the stylized stuff, there's such a big gap there, and, you know, I'm obviously interested and fascinated just talking to you this little bit. I mean, it's great, and I think I would love to see more art like this. I want to do art like this. To me, it's the most exciting kind of genre of 3D right now, like we see with Arcane and Marvel Rivals. Just I just feel the reinvigoration of 3D and what it can do, being in this stylized space in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. And it's exciting. So I think it'd be great to hear more from you and,
Yeah,
and
man.
to see more from you. So yeah, if anyone's interested, they can look you up online, right? I mean, I'll put your link down below in the description or in the notes. You know, you said you have a Gumroad, so yeah,
Yep.
you can obviously just Google Fred Arsenault and check out YouTube and everything. But yeah, thank you so much
Of
for your
course, man.
time and yeah,
Absolutely.
sharing. It's really been great to talk
I
to you.
I appreciate you reaching out, and it's an honor to be here, man. I've been following your work for a while, so this is awesome. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, dude. Yeah, it goes both ways. Again, thank you for your time and thank you for everyone that's been listening. Catch you in the next one. Peace out.